February 28, 2026. It was supposed to be a morning like any other in Tehran. Government officials were gathering for a meeting. The supreme leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, a man who had ruled with an iron fist for 36 years, was at his compound in the heart of the Iranian capital. And then the sky fell. In the early hours of that morning, a joint American and Israeli military operation, codenamed Operation Epic Fury, launched one of the most audacious and consequential military strikes in modern history. Dozens of precision-guided munitions, delivered by Israeli Air Force jets guided by months of CIA intelligence tracking, hit the compound where Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and senior Iranian leadership were assembled. The palace was destroyed. The office compound was obliterated. And when the dust settled, the man who had led Iran since 1989, who had shaped the Middle East's most powerful network of proxy forces, who had stared down 4 decades of American pressure and refused to blink, was dead. Iranian state television confirmed Khamenei's death in the early hours of March 1, 2026. Trump took to social media immediately, celebrating, crowing, declaring that Khamenei had been unable to avoid American intelligence and Israeli precision. He called it a historic victory, a defining moment, the beginning of a new Middle East. But empires do not fall because you kill one man. And what happened next is a story the world was not prepared for, because while Khamenei was dead, Iran was not. To understand what followed, you have to understand what Operation Epic Fury was built on top of. For years, through the 12-day war of June 2025, through the nuclear negotiations that collapsed in February 2026, through a domestic crisis in Iran that saw security forces massacre an estimated 30,000 civilians in the worst crackdown since the 1979 revolution, the CIA had been building a targeting architecture of unprecedented precision: satellites, human intelligence networks, electronic surveillance. For months before February 28th, American intelligence had been tracking Khamenei's patterns, his movements, his meetings. When the CIA confirmed that a gathering of Iran's senior leadership, including Khamenei himself, would take place that Saturday morning, the decision was made. The attack was moved from nighttime, when Israel had always struck before, to daytime, to maximize the element of surprise. The strikes were devastatingly precise. In addition to Khamenei, multiple senior commanders of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps were killed. Iran's top military architecture was decapitated in a single morning. But here is what Trump and Netanyahu did not fully account for. Iran had prepared for this. Iranian officials reported that Khamenei had been preemptively relocated from his Tehran residence hours before the strikes, citing prior intelligence warnings of an impending attack facilitated by Iran's counterintelligence apparatus, which had detected heightened U.S. and Israeli operational activity in the region. This relocation, if true, means the operation unfolded in a fog of conflicting intelligence. And what is certain is that within hours of the strikes, Iran activated emergency succession protocols that had been prepared precisely for this scenario. Ali Larijani, a broadly trusted senior official and secretary of the Supreme National Security Council, assumed de facto leadership immediately. And within days, a new supreme leader was announced. Mojtaba Khamenei, the son of the assassinated leader, considered even more hawkish and repressive than his father, was elevated to lead the Islamic Republic. An Iranian lawmaker confirmed that Mojtaba had been present during the attack on his father's compound but survived, having endured what was described as an assassination attempt, and that a subsequent strike targeting a hospital where Mojtaba was present also failed to eliminate him. Iran had a new supreme leader, and he was angrier, more ideologically rigid, and more committed to retaliation than almost anyone in the world had anticipated. The response came fast, and it came from everywhere simultaneously. Iran launched hundreds of ballistic missiles and thousands of drones at targets across the Middle East. Israeli cities were hit. American military bases in Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and the United Arab Emirates were targeted. Iran fired missiles into central Israel, Saudi Arabia, and Bahrain, forcing the closure of the key King Fahd Causeway between the two Gulf countries. Saudi Arabia's defense ministry reported assessing damage to its energy facilities caused by debris from dozens of ballistic missiles and drones. And then Iran did something that sent shockwaves through every financial market on the planet. It closed the Strait of Hormuz, 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, the single most important choke point in global energy supply. 20% of the world's oil passes through it. Liquefied natural gas from Qatar, crude from the UAE, Saudi exports, Iraqi oil, All of it flows through that narrow strip of water, and Iran sealed it. Brent crude oil spiked, global stock markets went into freefall, airlines suspended routes across the Middle East. Dubai International Airport, one of the busiest in the world, took drone strikes and halted flights entirely before reopening in limited capacity days later. Shipping companies rerouted vessels around Africa, adding weeks to delivery times and billions in costs. The global economic disruption was immediate, cascading, and severe. Now let us talk about Nevatim. Because the title of this video is about Nevatim, and what happened to Israel's most strategic airbase is one of the most significant military events of this entire conflict. Nevatim Air Base in southern Israel is not just any military installation. It is the home of Israel's F-35I Adir fleet, the most advanced fighter jets in the Israeli Air Force's arsenal. It is where Israel's aerial refueling aircraft are based, enabling long-range strike missions deep into enemy territory. It houses intelligence units, transport aircraft, and the operational infrastructure that makes Israel's air campaign possible. Destroy Nevatim, and you severely degrade Israel's ability to project air power. That was exactly what Iran was trying to do. In October 2024, approximately 1/4 of Iranian missiles had already penetrated Israeli defenses, with at least 32 striking the Nevatim airbase directly. Others hit near Tel Nof, believed to store nuclear weapons, causing secondary explosions. That was a warning shot, a demonstration of capability. Iran was telling Israel, "We can reach you. We can hit what matters." In the 2026 war, Iran went further. Armed with the coordinates filmed by spy networks that had infiltrated Israeli security, a spy-for-hire network successfully filmed sensitive sites, including the Nevatim airbase, the port of Haifa, and the Glilot military intelligence headquarters, and Iran later used these coordinates for its ballistic missile retaliations. Iran launched a concentrated barrage specifically designed to overwhelm Israeli air defenses at Nevatim. Hangars were destroyed, runways were hit. Infrastructure that Israel had spent decades building was struck by missiles that had been calibrated, improved, and redesigned specifically to defeat the Arrow and David's sling systems protecting the base. From the third day of the war onward, fewer than 20 missiles per day were being fired at Israel, but the damage to Israeli military infrastructure in the early days had already been done, with 3,100 residences damaged sufficiently to require evacuation. Israel struck back with overwhelming force. The IDF dropped 6,500 bombs on Iran, surpassing the 4,500 bombs dropped during the 12-day war of June 2025, while U.S. Air Force strikes hit over 3,000 targets in Iran, believed to be equal to or greater than the Israeli total, given that the U.S. uses more bombs per target. IRGC headquarters were destroyed. The Quds Force, the most feared operational arm of Iranian power, responsible for proxy wars across the region, had its headquarters obliterated. 75% of Iran's ballistic missile launchers were destroyed or neutralized. But here is the geopolitical reality that made this moment so explosive for Washington. Trump had launched a real war, not a drone strike, not a limited operation, not a show of force. A full-scale military conflict involving the United States of America in the Middle East started without a declaration of war from Congress, launched while Iran was still engaged in nuclear negotiations, and executed without meaningful consultation with NATO allies. And it was not going the way Trump had promised. The attacks followed the failure of indirect negotiations in February 2026 on a new agreement to curtail Iran's nuclear program. The mediating Omani foreign minister had stated significant progress, with Iran willing to make concessions, but Trump said he was not thrilled with the talks. He walked away from diplomacy, and within days, Operation Epic Fury began. The political fallout inside Washington was immediate and intense. Democrats accused Defense Secretary Hegseth of misleading the public about war progress. Congressional hearings grew hostile. Questions multiplied about the legal basis for the war, the absence of congressional authorization, the humanitarian cost of strikes that hit schools, hospitals, and civilian infrastructure in Iran. European allies were furious. France and Germany joined the UK in condemning Iranian counterstrikes, but none of them joined the war. Spain refused to allow the United States to use its air bases, and Trump threatened to cut trade with Spain in response. NATO, the most powerful military alliance in history, was watching an American president fight a Middle Eastern war while simultaneously threatening to abandon the alliance entirely over unrelated disagreements. The alliance was fraying from every direction simultaneously. And then came the panic. Trump said Iran had told him it was in a state of collapse and wanted the U.S. to open the Strait of Hormuz as soon as possible while trying to figure out their leadership situation. But the strait remained closed. Oil prices hit $112 per barrel. The ceasefire that had been announced in early April was already under strain. The U.S. Navy seized an Iranian cargo ship on April 19, saying it was attempting to evade the blockade. Iran called this seizure a breach of the ceasefire and retaliated by launching drones at U.S. ships. The ceasefire was holding, barely, and every day it held, a new crisis threatened to unravel it. Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, the man who survived the assassination attempt, the man who watched his father killed by American intelligence and Israeli jets, issued a statement vowing that Iran would continue fighting. Iranian military officials told state media that the conflict was ongoing, that the Islamic Republic did not consider the war over, that if any aggression was repeated, Iran would respond with new tools, new methods, and in new arenas. The global strategic implications of what has happened over the past 2 months are still being calculated by governments, analysts, and military planners around the world. The assassination of a sitting head of state by a joint American-Israeli operation is the most significant crossing of an international norm since the Second World War. The assassination is likely to make Khamenei a martyr and provides the Iranian regime an avenue for cohesion when its internal legitimacy was under severe strain. The man whose regime had massacred 30,000 of its own citizens in January 2026 is now being mourned as a symbol of resistance against American imperialism across the Islamic world. In Pakistan, protests escalated into clashes with security forces. In Baghdad, demonstrators attempted to storm the U.S. Embassy. In Morocco, Nigeria, South Korea, Spain, Turkey, and the United Kingdom, anti-war demonstrations filled the streets. Trump had hoped to liberate the Iranian people. Instead, he may have given the Iranian regime its most powerful rallying point in decades. And yet the situation inside Iran is genuinely complex. Iran's government was quick to prevent a vacuum in leadership, and its swift movement to replace leaders killed in the conflict indicated both the stability of the regime and the resolve of Iran's hardliners in the face of conflict. The succession happened fast, too fast for the chaos and collapse that American planners had hoped to trigger. But underneath the surface, Iran is broken. Its military has lost 75% of its ballistic missile launchers. Its oil infrastructure is severely damaged. Its economy, already strangled by decades of sanctions, is now under additional pressure from a U.S. counter-blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Trump himself says Iran told him it is in a state of collapse. The question that nobody in Washington, Tel Aviv, Tehran, or Beijing can answer right now is this: what comes next? Does Iran's new supreme leader choose survival over ideology and negotiate a deal that ends the war and reopens the strait, accepting terms that humiliate the Islamic Republic but preserve its existence? Or does he choose the path of his father, defiance, resistance, and the willingness to absorb enormous punishment rather than be seen as surrendering to American and Israeli pressure? The answer to that question will determine not just the fate of Iran and Israel, but the price of oil, the stability of the global economy, the future of American military credibility, and the shape of a world order that is being rewritten in real time, because this is what empire looks like in 2026. Not clean, not triumphant, not the simple story of a villain eliminated and a region liberated. It is messy, it is dangerous, it is economically destabilizing, and it is producing consequences that no one, not in Washington, not in Tel Aviv, not anywhere, fully anticipated. Khamenei is dead. A new Khamenei has risen. Nevatim has been struck. The Strait of Hormuz has been closed and partially reopened. Trump is panicking and projecting confidence simultaneously. And the Middle East is burning in ways that will reshape global power for the next generation. This is the World Order Lab, and this is only the beginning. Stay locked in.